Are you dreading your next home repair? Don't. Crew Pros is your one-call solution for everything your home needs. Whether it's heating and air, plumbing, complete roof replacement, whole home generators, and electrical repairs. Our professionals get the job done right. Crew Pros is your single source for high-quality home services at affordable prices. For everything your home needs, Crew Pros. Remodel, repair, replace.
Memphis. Nothing but Memphis. Everywhere we go, it's Memphis. Memphis, Tennessee, the beautiful land in the world.
And I'm thankful for this guy who tweeted and said, I don't have that fire in my eye no more. That game right there was for him. That's what I do. I prove people wrong each and every night, and that's for him right there.
Hi, this is Tom Izzo at Michigan State, and you're listening to Grizz 901.
Grizz Nation, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Grizz 901 on this beautiful Tuesday. It's a Tuesday, so you know what we're doing here. We are talking Grizz basketball. I'd like to welcome you guys all to the show. I am your host, Brandon Wakiji of Bluff City Media, filling in for your normal, lovely co-host, Daniel Greer and Nathan Qualls. It's been a whirlwind kind of a week for the Grizzlies, and this week kind of culminated in a lot of things. We have slowly the schedule release coming out for the NBA. We also had some great FIBA action from some Memphis Grizzlies, which we're going to get into later with our very special guest of the show today. But thank you guys for coming, and thank you for watching, however you may be watching or listening to Grizz 901. We are presented by our lovely sponsor, Zach Jaworski State Farm, where they treat you like family. All right, so let's get right into it, guys, on this Tuesday and the Grizzlies. And we're going to start with some social media shenanigans. We're going to break down what's kind of been happening all around the social scene with the Grizzlies. And like I mentioned, this week, the NBA is slowly releasing its schedule for next season, for the upcoming season. And of course, the Grizzlies, being an NBA team, are going to be featured in that. And so few things happened. They came in bits and pieces. The first piece that did come of this schedule release was the Christmas Day games. So last year the Grizzlies played the Warriors on Christmas Day. However, that is no longer the case this year. The Grizzlies are not going to be featured on Christmas Day in any of those games. And so that was definitely kind of a disappointment. If you're a Grizzlies fan, you always feels good to have your team play on Christmas, to be broadcasted in the bright lights, to have that big stage. And we know, of course, even though the Grizzlies weren't very victorious on that stage last season, it's still good to be talked about, and it's still good to be on that stage. And the Grizzlies were not on that stage, so that was kind of the first domino to fall. The Grizzlies not getting that Christmas Day game, in a sense. And then we also had today some breaking. I guess you could call it breaking, but some news release just a couple of hours ago. The NBA released its schedule for the in-season tournament that's going to be happening. It's a brand new thing that's happening this season, where the NBA is having a tournament in season and inviting teams, all 30 teams, to compete for I think it's the NBA Cup. I don't know what they've officially coined the term, but they announced the schedule for that today, and the broadcast schedule. And the way the in-season tournament works, for those of you who may not know, is that all 30 teams in the NBA have been divided into 6 groups of 5 within their conference based off their win-loss records from the season. And so the way it's going to work is that the 6 groups of 5 teams are going to be in this conference and play. They're going to each play each other in group play games. And then the winners of that group are going to go to the knockout round, which is going to be the tournament style of things. It's going to be held in Las Vegas, in Las Vegas. And so the Grizzlies group includes the LA Lakers. It includes the Phoenix Suns, the Portland Trailblazers, and the Utah Jazz. And so in terms of the Grizzlies schedule, they'll be playing the Portland Trailblazers on Friday, November the 3rd. They'll be playing the Utah Jazz on November the 10th at home. They'll then be playing the LA Lakers on November 14th in LA. And then finally, they'll culminate group play by playing Phoenix on Friday, November the 24th, at home. And so they'll play these 4 games in the in-season tournament. And then whoever in this group is, the biggest winner of the group is going to move on to the knockout round and finish out the tournament in Las Vegas. And what is rather surprising is that in the in-season tournament, the Grizzlies only have one nationally televised game. And so all the first games in group play are going to be in the NBA teams' arenas before they go on to Las Vegas for the tournament style of things. And so the Grizzlies only have one nationally televised game, and it's on NBA TV, and it's the game on Friday the 24th against the Phoenix Suns. That was pretty surprising. What was surprising to me, I will say, is that the Phoenix Suns game was nationally televised, but not the LA Lakers game. I think that day the San Antonio Spurs and the Thunder play, and then the Nuggets and the Clippers. I would have thought if I were a betting man, I would have put all my money on the LA Lakers game being nationally broadcasted, just because you think of the LA Lakers knocked out the Grizzlies in the first round last year. We know there's clearly a history of sorts there between these two teams. I thought that was the game that would have been broadcasted. But they decided the Phoenix Suns game was going to be broadcasted, and that's their only nationally televised game. Teams like the Lakers and the Suns and the Clippers, they have multiple nationally broadcasted games. And that kind of brings me into my main point when we talk about the Grizzlies and national television, is that we are really seeing in real time the consequences of Ja Morant's suspension, in which he's going to miss the first 25 games of the season. And because of that, the Grizzlies are not going to be as nationally televised. I think the first domino to fall was really that Christmas game where, they're not going to be there. They only have one nationally televised game in the in-season tournament. The rest of the NBA schedule is going to be released later this week, I believe on Thursday. I don't expect the Grizzlies to have many nationally televised games there. And why is that? It's because, look, there's a really unfortunate reality here, and it's that the NBA is a superstar-driven league. We know that. People tune on basketball games on their television to watch LeBron James making a highlight dunk. They turn it on to watch guys like Luka Doncic do some crazy in and out dribble moves. The NBA is a star-driven league, and Ja Morant is that star who got eyes on the Grizzlies. Ever since he was drafted, Ja is a Showtime player. He's a walking highlight reel. And without Ja Morant playing, the Grizzlies aren't going to get national attention because Ja Morant is really what brings eyes to the team. It's a very unfortunate reality, of course. Like it's not fair, right? Because the Grizzlies, of course, they have Jaren Jackson Jr. emerging as a dominant player. They have Desmond Bane coming into his own as another dominant guard in this league. But reality is, without Ja Morant for these first 25 games, the national media is not going to talk about the Grizzlies very widely. And that's just the way it is, because Ja Morant isn't playing, and he is the player through his highlight style of play that brings attention to the Grizzlies. Like, imagine Ja Morant's first three seasons in the league, where he was just clearly one of the most dominant and exciting players in the game. He was on every single, whether that was like an ESPN social graphic or like a highlight or anything of the kind, Ja Morant was on there. And look, without Ja Morant, the Grizzlies just aren't going to be talked about. And look, we're seeing that Ja Morant's actions have a direct impact on his teammates, right? As fair or unfair as it is, Ja playing well brings a spotlight to the Grizzlies and guys like Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. And without Ja Morant, look, the reality is these guys just aren't going to be talked about as much. And that can be a great thing depending on how you see it. Now, that means no expectations. That means no one expects the Grizzlies to play a certain way. That means no one is really expecting anything out of the Grizzlies this season, because they're not going to have the cameras on them. They're not going to have the spotlight on them. And personally, I think this team plays better when it's underrated. It plays better when it's under the radar. And we're going to see that this season, because other guys are going to have to step up. Other guys are going to have to occupy that spotlight for the team and play for the team. But look, Ja Morant is what gets the Grizzlies airtime. It's the reality. The NBA is a business at the end of the day, and look, they're going to broadcast the people who are going to bring eyes to their product of basketball, right? The in-season tournament, to me, it is what it is. I think it's a really just gimmicky thing. I think it's clearly there for the NBA to just try and it's a money grab for the NBA to try and get some extra cash over the course of the season. You know, competing with football, competing with the NFL, they're trying to have a different. They're trying to do something different to really get more eyes on the NBA. I couldn't really care less about this in-season tournament. I'm going to watch basketball games no matter what. But the NBA is clearly trying to get more fans engaged in the game and trying to do more things around this game. Like, I don't think the in-season tournament really hurts anything or really does anything really impactful, but I mean, I'm going to watch. And I think it's just, I think now as the team, as the fan base, I think for one, there's two important things here. I think for one, you have Ja Morant, who has to really decide if he wants to play this game of basketball long term and really get his act together and clean it up for the Grizzlies, because he is what brings eyes to the rest of his teammates. He is what provides that spotlight for his teammates to actually to have that spotlight and to be known widely all around the association. And so for one, Ja Morant's going to have to decide, get his act together and decide, do I want to play that? I want to continue playing basketball at this high level and focus on that for the rest of my career. And then secondly, I think the Grizzlies have to form this new identity without Ja in these first few games as they as they prepare to enter this next transition stage of being championship contenders. And so I think we're going to have two of these storylines kind of come about over the course of the season, and it's going to be really interesting. Going to be really interesting to watch. I don't discount that in the second half of the season, once Ja returns, especially when you consider that this team is still going to be really good. They're going to have one of the best defensive talents in Jaren Jackson Jr. Desmond Bane is going to be fully healthy off the toe. Steven Adams fully healthy. This team is still going to be very good. Don't get that twisted. So they're going to win a lot of games. And so I expect in that second half of the season, once Ja returns, I expect those national TV games to shoot up. I expect them to have just as many national TV games once Ja is back. Assuming that Ja gets his act together and everything, because Ja's a superstar and Ja's box office. And so it's going to be a different kind of start to the season for the Grizzlies, but I think we're really going to see something different about this team and really how this team can come together and play without expectations. And that's what's happening in the social world of the Grizzlies. But without further ado, I'm going to welcome tonight's guest onto the show. A very, very good friend of mine and someone who is literally the Grizzlies Twitter. Like he is the face of Grizzlies Twitter. He is the guy of Grizzlies Twitter. I work side by side with him on Bluff City Media. You can also find him as the host of the Next Gen podcast, another wonderful podcast on the Bluff City Media Network. But without further ado, I'm going to welcome Bryson Wright onto the show tonight.
What's up, Brandon? How you doing, man?
Bryson, how are you doing, boss?
I'm doing good. I was listening to you talk about the in-season tournament. The schedule's going to be real interesting, but I do agree with you because I know we talked about it a little bit earlier too, but I think it's okay that they're not going to have as many national TV games. I see that as, we get to listen to Pete and Brevin more. So, I mean, It's a win for us anyway.
Dude, absolutely. I think, for one, we got two of the best guys in the business in Pete and Brevin calling the show, calling the shots. So more of that is never a bad thing at all. Right. And just for context, I'd also like to thank Bryson for coming on, because tonight is the WNBA Commissioner's Cup final, and Bryson and I are both huge fans of the Las Vegas Aces, who are playing the New York Liberty. Bryson is, of course, as you can see,
I got the shirt and everything.
Much bigger fan than I am. So I really thank Bryson for coming on to the show tonight. And we're gonna make this as fast as possible, so we can go to
Oh no, man, it's all good. Dominate. I got you. No, it's all good. I can always sit and talk Grizzlies though.
Dude, yeah, absolutely. So dude, let's get right into the Grizzlies talk. This past week, we really saw two Grizzlies in particular have some really great showings on the international stage. Normally this is a dead period in basketball, right? Like, not much going on, but we got the FIBA World Cup this year. And what's really special about it is that there are two Grizzly players really emerging as the talents that they are over the course of this tournament. Of course, we have Jaren Jackson Jr. on Team USA. The USA played 2 games this past weekend. They played the first game against Slovenia, and Jaren Jackson, that was a bit of he wasn't as much of a factor in that game. Had 2 points, 4 rebounds, but he did bounce back in the following day's game against Spain with an all-around just dominant performance. 14 points, 5 rebounds, 3 blocks, 1 made 3-pointer. Also just an anchor on defense. Had some great baskets in the flow of Team USA's offense. And then on the other side of the coin, Santi Aldama has really been coming onto his own for Team Spain. In the game against Slovenia, he had 18 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists. Followed that up with the game against USA, where we actually saw Jaren and Santi together. Santi Aldama had 14 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. And I think I've personally just been really guilty of just throughout this entire FIBA experience. I've really just kind of focused on what Jaren's doing. Jaren being that longest tenure Grizzly on the team, playing for Team USA, that I've been really guilty of overlooking Santi and what he's doing with Team Spain and how he's really coming onto his own. We can see him growing as a offensive facilitator, as an offensive hub. We can see him really in isolation, scoring a lot better, just really looking all around more confident on the court. And so, Bryce, let me turn this to you and ask you, when you see these guys, playing on this international stage and doing what they're doing with both of their respective teams, what does that mean for you when you think about going into next season and how these guys can contribute to the Grizzlies?
Well, one thing it kind of shows you kind of where guys are in their development over the summer. I think that's really the biggest thing. And then, but also with these international coaches, and with Team USA, it's a chance to see what Steve Kerr does. And he's a coach that's won championships. Eric Spoelstra's on the staff. And you look and you can see, okay, this is the way that they would use Jaren if Jaren was on their team. So it does give you a little bit of insight into that. And that's what I've really looked at. And then also, with Jaren specifically, it's giving you kind of a sneak peek of what he would look like if he played the 5 full time, which obviously he doesn't do for the Grizzlies because they have Steven Adams. But that's something that they even mentioned in one of the mic'd up segments where they were like, it's going to be a big step for him for this because he's not playing next to Steven Adams. So I think that's the biggest thing for Jaren. And then for Santi, the biggest takeaway I've had is that he looks like he's just moving way better overall. Like he looks faster. He looks like stronger, but also slimmer at the same time. Like I feel like he's really coming to his own. He's been jumping a lot better. I feel like he's had some pretty nice dunks.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, that dude it feels like his athleticism is kind of, hitting his peak, and it's kind of it feels like he's getting more athletic too. And then the jumpers look nice too. I saw some clips even. So I've been looking at the Spanish basketball team Twitter page, and they've been posting highlights of him, and even if it was practice, and he was hitting some threes in practice too. So the jumper's looking nice. Everything's looking nice. There was one game where he led the team in points, rebounds, and assists. So, he's also kind of showing that he can be a little bit of a playmaker as well, even though that's not going to be his primary role. But yeah, I'm very excited with what he's doing.
Yeah, I think when you kind of like you mentioned, that Swiss Army knife aspect of Santi Aldama has really shined through in this FIBA play. I remember him in the game against USA. They were using him to perform dribble handoffs. He was taking the ball up the court, initiating offensive actions. These are normally not things that he's doing on the Memphis Grizzlies, right? But then you consider the context of the season. Coming into next season, Ja Morant's not going to be here for the first 25 games. There's going to be a lot of new faces on the team. And so they're going to be guys that need to step up, perform in roles that they've never really performed in before. And that's really led me to believe that Santi is in for yet another leap coming into next season. We know he had one last season where he just really flourished as a NBA contributor in general, right? But I think next season we're going to see Santi just get into more of his game and get more confidence in his game as a player, and not really just playing in the flow of the Grizzlies offense, playing his role, but really putting the ball on the floor, making plays, really being that offensive hub for the Grizzlies at times like we've never seen him before. And something that was kind of crazy to me. I'm not sure if this is like a permanent thing, but Santi did not start in the game against Team USA, and that's kind of crazy to think.
He hasn't been starting. So I think one of the things with Team Spain is they have they're the number one team in the world. Those guys have played together for a long time. And he's been really good, kind of like as their sixth man. I kind of feel like that's kind of the role that he's taken, which honestly is fine because I mean that's what he's going to be doing for the Grizzlies. So I think it is kind of it's kind of a good look into that. But yeah, he's basically kind of like their sixth man, but he's been really good in that role. And he's also, like I said, he's led the team in scoring a couple times. And then I also look at he might not start the games, but he's been closing games. I know that for sure. So that's a big thing to look at as well.
Dude, okay. Yeah. That makes so much sense because I mean, for one, that speaks to the sheer talent that Spain has, just top to bottom. They're just a really talented team. Think about their Hernan Gomez brothers there, Rudy Fernandez, who had a really storied career in the NBA. I think for Santi,
I was kind of surprised to see him still playing.
Yeah, me too.
Playing for Team Spain since 2004.
Yeah,
like that's how long he's been on Team Spain, and I was like, he's got it. This might be his last one, or maybe the next Olympics is going to be his last one, probably. But that's an insane career, just not even in the NBA.
No, I totally agree. I remember for one, like watching the team, the documentary about the Redeem team, and dude, he was cooking the USA in that gold medal game. Rudy Fernandez has always given Team USA issues. In that game too, he was hitting threes like it was nothing, man. I think it's really awesome to watch international basketball. I think particularly because you see these players just in different roles in different environments and see them flourish in different environments. Guys like Santi, guys like Rudy Fernandez, guys like Luka Doncic, who is, an all NBA player in his own right, but putting up 30, 40-point triple doubles. I think that's what's so exciting about international basketball is seeing guys in these different environments and this different context. And I think Santi is just one such player who's really going to thrive in international basketball because kind of like Jaren on Team USA, he's doing things that he's never that he normally doesn't do on the Grizzlies, but things are going to only help him grow further and only help him progress further as a player. And I think that's just amazing to watch.
Yeah, definitely. And I will say I'm very excited for the development of both of these guys coming out of this. I think that it's going to be really good for them just overall. But I will also say for Santi, I think so. Kind of last year, there was a question of if he was going to be ready to start. He started those games. I think that was really good for him. And I wouldn't be surprised, not to say that he's going to start at the 3, but I think that they're gonna mess around with the lineups. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Santi in the starting lineup for some games.
Yeah, no, I think we kind of like you said, kind of like you mentioned, just Santi's skill set provides you so much versatility because he doesn't. It's not like he plays like that traditional 4, even your traditional stretch 4. He's got finesse around the rim. He has handles. He can dribble. So I think that versatility in Santi and what you see in Santi is going to be something that the Grizzlies can really experiment and mess around with next season. Just kind of knowing that this team is in transition and kind of knowing that they're going to see a new Grizzlies team next season in a lot of different ways. And because of that, I also want to talk about Jaren. Like I said, he had that against Slovenia, had a bit of a slower game, wasn't as much as a factor on offense, but in Spain just had just a crazy game. Like I said, 14 points, 5 rebounds, three blocks, and we saw him shoot a 3, which he's never. I don't even think he attempted a 3. I'm not sure if I have that right, but we saw him hit a 3 at the top of the key, and I think that the versatility that speaks to what that Steve Kerr really valued, the idea that Jaren, he's not just like a big who can dominate inside, but he can play his perimeter game, and that gives Team USA so many other options. And I want to say that I think consistently Jaren has been the best player over the course of this tournament. All things aside, we know the Slovenia game wasn't as great a game for him, but I think every single game we're kind of seeing Jaren unlock new things, do different things, and just really be an all-out offensive and defensive force for this team. And when you think about, like those players voting for him as the best player in training camp and just all the players raving about him, it's just great to watch. And we know that Jaren, he's still learning a lot of things, and in the FIBA game, he's had some fouls just from defense, but that's part of the natural progression as a player, especially on a stage that Jaren's never played in before. But just kind of turning it back to you, what do you think really this FIBA experience can be for Jaren, just kind of moving forward based off of what you've seen?
Well, I will say it's kind of interesting when you look at the way that he has played and kind of comparing if he's been the best player on the team. It's kind of difficult just because I feel like you don't usually get to see Jaren with as many talented players as he's with right now. He's with Jalen Brunson and Brandon Ingram and all these guys in the starting lineup, Mikal Bridges, and kind of learning how to play off of those guys and finding his spots, which is something that he can continue to get better at when he's playing off of, Desmond Bane. And, I think there's also some things that you can see, like the things that Tyrese Halliburton has done with him in like the pick and roll. I think that's something that the Grizzlies could take away, that maybe him and Ja could look at and see kind of how they got there. But also I think just the FIBA rules in general and playing like a more physical game, I think it's going to help him come back and learn how to be more physical without fouling. And also, it's only 5 fouls in this too. So I think that's another thing that it's going to help him with. So I would really say that's a big takeaway is he's going to continue to learn how to be physical without fouling. And, having an even smaller cutoff of only 5 fouls is going to make it even more important. And I think that's something that's going to help him learn. And in the game against Spain, there were multiple guys in foul trouble. Jaren was not one of them. He only had 2. So, that was a good sign as well. So I think that's going to help him a lot going forward. And then I think just continuing to like develop being like a vocal leader. I know that's a lot of what the coaches and the media that have been in the practices have said, especially on defense. Really, he's taken over and being the defensive leader. You can see that in some of the mic'd up stuff they've done as well. So, yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest things for Jaren. And, getting to play for Team USA and possibly winning a gold medal. I mean, it would also it'd be awesome for his resume just in general, But, I mean, that's just something to be super proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. On all fronts, I think this experience, just like I've stated, we're going to see that development and just kind of this experience is going to be the catalyst of what I believe will be an all-NBA, just all-around dominant season from Jaren Jackson Jr. And we're seeing that in, like you said, like you've seen those clips of him being a vocal leader on defense, like calling guys out on their assignments, telling them where to be. Like these things have just really just kind of been festering ever since he came into the league. But I think he really actualizes his role as a leader of this team now and really actualizes his role as a main franchise, or one of the main franchise stars on this team. And so honestly, this FIBA experience couldn't have come at a better time for him. And as they kind of ramp up into group play, there's only a few more exhibition games left. They're playing Greece, I believe, on Friday, and then some other teams, and then getting into group play. I just can't talk enough about how this experience is going to be so great for Jaren Jackson Jr. and Santi Aldama moving forward. And, with that, and, talking about the Grizzlies, talking about some of their main contributors, I want to talk about the bench because I feel like that's also a huge storyline heading into next season is really what this bench is going to kind of look like, especially the wing position. Like let's be real. It's going to be fierce. The competition there is going to be fierce because you have so many different guys who in a lot of ways bring different things to the table, but are all in a different way, have something to prove, have something to show, right? But talking about the whole bench, we know a guy that's definitely going to be a big contributor on the bench is Santi Aldama, right? Because just knowing his tenure with the team, knowing what he's already done for the team, he's going to be there. Luke Kennard, huge trade deadline acquisition last season for the Grizzlies. He's going to have I think it's just a really underrated aspect of this offseason. He's going to have a full offseason with the team, full training camp with the team. He's really going to be integrated into this Grizzlies team and its culture heading into next season. And I think that's going to just play leaps and bounds in terms of the on-court product. And then also Xavier Tillman, of course, coming off that great playoff run against the Lakers. And we know what he can do on defense, his ability to switch onto wings and guards pretty easily, and just really be a play finisher as well for this team. But I think the question that I have with this bench is we know that the bench, even though there's a lot of promise on the bench, we know that the bench still really needs to have someone still needs to spark that bench unit in terms of just every night and providing contributions to the team. And so what I want to ask you is, do you expect anyone on this Grizzlies? What are your kind of thoughts on this Grizzlies bench coming into next season? Do you expect anyone or players on this bench to really show leaps and be those leaders off the bench, knowing just kind of this huge role the Grizzlies bench is going to play next season?
Well, the biggest question is going to be who is actually going to be on the bench. I think that's the first thing, because at the beginning of the season, it's going to be Marcus Smart, it's going to be Desmond Bane, it's going to be Jaren Jackson Jr., and it's going to be Steven Adams. And then the real question is going to be who is going to take that spot. Is it going to be Zaire Williams? Is it going to be Jake LaRavia? Are they going to run with Luke Kennard? Are they going to do something like that? So I think that's the first question. But those are all guys that, when Ja comes back, you're expecting to move back to the bench. So first of all, I think Luke Kennard is going to have to take a big step forward. I think he's going to have to do a lot more with the ball in his hands this year. And there's film of him doing that in the past, especially back when he was on Detroit. Not to say that, Derrick Rose, he's still going to be there and he's going to be kind of a backup point guard, but we'll see if he's going to get consistent minutes the whole season or not. That's not, that's kind of a question mark. But when he got consistent minutes last season, he still looked pretty good, earned good enough to get minutes. So I think that's going to be interesting to see, especially at the beginning of the season, because Ja's going to be out. He's going to have a big role as the primary backup point guard. And then, Santi Aldama, like I said, I think that this FIBA experience is going to be good for him. We're going to see him continue to get better as a shooter. I think he's going to be more aggressive offensively. I really feel like he just took a big step overall in every aspect last year. And I think he's really the type of player that's going to do that again, just because I think just the more experience he gets, he's just going to continue to get better. And sometimes it takes longer for big guys. It took a little bit for Jaren to really get to the point where he's at now. But Santi, I think that he's kind of not to say he's going to get to the same level defensively that Jaren is, but I feel like when you look at the way Jaren developed, he's developing in a similar way. And then if it's Zaire Williams that comes off the bench, I think he's going to have to have a big role, because that was really something that I feel like they did last year. Zaire.
Oh, I think we are having some audio issues with Bryson at the moment. Apologies, but I'll continue the conversation over these airwaves. He was talking about Zaire, and I totally agree at this point. I think how great this bench performs, believe it or not, is going to be Zaire Williams. I think he's going to be that turning point, or really that key player for the bench for the Grizzlies this year, because you think about what Zaire can do at the moment, right? Or what he's shown. He provides vertical spacing. He's a lob threat. If he's coming from the baseline, he is a threat to, just get up there and catch a lob, right? He can also operate in the mid-range. He's a very effective mid-range specialist. He can, we know when he gets that lift on his shot in the mid-range, given his height, he's very hard to stop. We saw him be a force on defense. We saw him just really be a very competent perimeter defender. In many ways, excelled as a perimeter defender, especially in the playoffs as a rookie against the Timberwolves and the Warriors. And when you think about Zaire, a lot of these things that he can do, right? Operate in the mid-range, be a vertical threat, be a lob threat, and really provide excellent perimeter defense. not a lot of guys in the Grizzlies can do that, right? And so his skill set is just so unique and so specialized that I think he'll be a swinging factor on the bench, because if Zaire can give you those contributions and give you his talents at a high level off the bench, I think the Grizzlies unlock a different level of themselves, not only as a regular season team, but as championship contenders. Because if you have a guy like Zaire coming off the bench doing those things, there's just not many guys in the league who can stop that. And look, I think it's very important that we note the rest of the guys on this team who, especially at the wing position, who can have minutes for the Grizzlies. We know David Roddy is going to be in that mix. He's going to be in the fold. I don't know about him starting just in those first 25 games, simply because David Roddy, while he can create a little bit, while he does have athleticism, he has strength. We know that creating is not a huge aspect of his game right now. We know it's his David Roddy's game at this moment is more being that role player who's going to give you energy, going to give you hustle off the floor, going to provide that burst of energy on the floor. And so he's someone you shouldn't discount at this stage. But I don't see him starting these first 25 games. But that's not to say he'll be a very impactful contributor off the bench. And I see here we have Bryson just coming on here. I think he's fixed his technological difficulties. So I'm going to welcome back Bryson Wright onto the show.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I guess it just got disconnected.
Nah, man, it's 2023. It's technology. Gotta love it.
It happens, man. It happens. Yeah. But I think I was talking about Zaire. I think that's where I was at. But yeah, no, I think that's something, because I feel like going into last offseason, it felt like he was supposed to be the person to take that next step, but we never got to see it because he was injured most of the year. And then when he came back, he never really looked like he was 100% himself. So to see him, be healthy this entire offseason and go through the workout program that they said he's been going through, hopefully he'll come back better. So I think that's really going to be the biggest question mark. I think is going to be, how does Zaire look? Because we saw his rookie year, he became a really good role player on the team. They made it to the second round of the playoffs. So he was a very important piece to that team. But that was also when he was in the starting lineup more. So that's another thing is, do you put Zaire in the starting lineup because he's going to benefit from playing with the starters more than somebody else you would put there?
Yeah. And look, I think for me, I've talked about these first 25 games. I think who is going to start is going to be the person who can shoot the best at the end of the day, right? Because when you think about just kind of the spacing, you're going to have Desmond Bane, who incredible shooter, one of the best shooters in this league. Jaren Jackson Jr., already another great shooter in this league. But, Marcus Smart, rather average shooter, 36%. He's on the floor for his defense, but he's respectable. You can't leave him open. Steven Adams, not really a spacing threat, has been shooting threes in the corner in these off-season workouts, though. I see you, Steven, but you need that guy who can really be that consistent catch and shoot threat, because not only will that be a huge plus for those first 25 games without Ja, it's also going to be a huge plus when Ja is back, because Luke Kennard, as one of the best shooters in the league, excellent, but you can't fully unleash Luke Kennard without having another floor spacer next to him. And that's why the Bane Kennard lineups are just so lethal, because they force teams to really focus on both of those shooters. And because of that opens the inside game for the Grizzlies. And so in that wing position, I think who's going to really emerge out of that group and be that guy that gets the starting spot and huge minutes off the bench is going to be the guy that can shoot the best. And I think because of that, a lot of people would veer towards Jake LaRavia, because coming out of college, that was his game. That's what he was known for. In summer league too, we saw him shoot a lot of 3-pointers. He did not shoot very well. I think he shot sub 30%, but granted, right, he was shooting a lot of shots off the dribble, coming off screens, a lot of movement shots, which he normally won't be doing on the Grizzlies. On the Grizzlies, he's going to be more of that catch and shoot player. And so I think, if you're looking for that perimeter spacing and that guy that's going to give you that perimeter spacing in those first 25 games and off the bench, you go towards Jake LaRavia, especially because, Zaire, he's got a great mid-range game, but the 3-point shot is still, it's not fully there. Even in his rookie season, I think he only shot around like 30, sub 30%. And so, when you just think about that, like spacing is still going to be really important for this team, even though they have two of the best shooters in the business right now. Do not get me wrong, but spacing is still going to be really important for this team. And so I think just in terms of that bench, and who can have those bench minutes moving forward and distinguish themselves, is going to be the guy who can space the floor the best. But what say you about that?
I mean, that's definitely like the main consideration, especially when Ja comes back, because I think that's the biggest thing you have to have. You have to surround Ja with people that can take catch and shoot threes, because he's going to open up so many of those opportunities because of how much attention he draws at the rim. So you know that if Jake LaRavia is playing in the lineup with Ja, he's going to get a lot of probably open corner threes, a lot of open threes at the wing. He's going to get a lot of good looks, and looks that are going to be better than what he was taking at Summer League. And then, I mean, it would be the same if Zaire's there. And then it really just comes down to who makes more of them. And then, Zaire, he started off and he struggled, but, at the end of his rookie year, he kind of picked it up. And then last year, it really just never felt like he was 100%. And then Jake, when he played last year, he was also injured. So I feel like they're kind of like on the same level, maybe, because you don't really know what you're going to get with either of them yet. But I think both of them are going to get a lot of opportunities, especially early on in the season, to kind of prove, who's going to take that spot. And then the same thing in training camp, that's what they're going to be doing. And I think that the battle for these minutes is also going to be really good for them overall. And I think whoever comes out the better of it, I think they're both going to be better players because of it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, it's going to be fire, and it's going to be intense just to see these guys duke it out in battle. But like you said, competition has this way of bringing out the best in people. And so because of that, we're really going to see guys emerge. I do want to get back to, the point guard off the bench, because while Luke Kennard, we saw him play that role in Detroit, we know he has the ball handling skills. I don't want to discount Derrick Rose, because, he's, especially with Ja being out, he's going to have to play a role, just in terms of being that steady rock off the bench. And, when Ja Morant returns to the lineup, we assume that Marcus Smart's going to occupy that two spot. I mean, I wouldn't bring one of the best perimeter defenders, frankly, in the league off the bench at that point. But, that's also going to be something in this bench that's a really big story. Who's going to occupy those main ball handling duties off the bench, really play that de facto point guard role off the bench? Because, I assume Jenkins is going to use a combination of those lineups where he makes Bane that point guard too, has him run with the bench, Bane and Kennard lineups galore as well. But, Rose can really factor into that too, as somebody who can facilitate, be aggressive offensively, driving inside and finishing. And so I'm going to be really interested in that storyline as well, just as much as everything, to really seeing how Jenkins decides to really settle that question of, okay, who's going to be our point guard off the bench and really have those duties, knowing that Tyus Jones is no longer on this team and was such an important part of bringing that stability as an offensive orchestrator off the bench.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that even without Tyus, and even with Tyus last year, we still had times where Desmond Bane was the de facto point guard on some of those lineups. And I think that that's something that they used his summer league time to kind of develop. And I think that that's why you're going to see sometimes where maybe it is going to be Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard basically running the 1 and 2. But they can both be, not to say that they're on the same level. I would say Bane is probably a little bit further ahead, because I think he's done it more consistently, more recently. And, in the NBA, it's always, what have you done for me lately? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's good that Luke Kennard did it on the Pistons, but, hey, and I still think he can be very good at it. But, I just saw Desmond Bane do it for the Grizzlies last year. And I think that he's going to be really big. He's going to take that a leadership role kind of on offense too, because even though Marcus Smart is still probably going to be the primary facilitator, Desmond Bane is somebody who's played with these guys longer. He knows where they like the ball. And last year he had a jump in his assists, and I think we could see that again, especially if he does kind of play a little bit of the backup point guard role. I think Derrick Rose is obviously going to play, but there's still going to be some minutes where neither Marcus Smart or Derrick Rose is on the floor. And I think that's when you're going to see some Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard being the point guard in those lineups.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't agree more. And you actually bring me to the last segment of our show today. It's going to be a quick hit about Desmond Bane, because this is really going to be, in my mind, a really huge season for Desmond Bane. Crazy to think, Desmond Bane hasn't, and we haven't really seen, right, a Desmond Bane where he is fully healthy, like not worrying about any type of injury, like over the course in a while, right? Because last year, we know he had the toe injury that kept him sidelined for a little bit. He had the back injury in the latter part of the playoffs last season, and so it's going to be incredible to see Desmond Bane just not having to worry about injuries or and really play his game. And we all reports are he's going to be a full go by training camp. He's going to be fully ready to start the season. And so, look, I think this is an all-star year for Desmond Bane because look, you think about just the context of this team. Without John Morant, the Grizzlies are going to need scoring production. And yes, it's going to come from Jaren Jackson Jr., of course, knowing what he can do. But Desmond Bane is the best three-level scorer on this team, without a doubt. I don't think anyone would debate anybody on that. He is a guy who can score at all three levels collectively, best on this team. We know he's an offensive just highlight whenever he gets the ball. And so you think about who's going to fill in that scoring production role. That's going to be Desmond Bane. I think I can see, because last season before he had the injury, he was averaging about 25 points per game. Looked like a surefire all-star. Just really unfortunate that the whole breaking and toe thing happened, which I'm sure was very painful. But he still played through that, had the retrofitted shoe. But now Desmond Bane can really play his game without injury, and I can't stress enough how much that's going to show in just his offensive production and everything that he's going to contribute over the course of this year. And so do you think it's a crazy thought to say that Desmond Bane, it can be an all-star next year?
Oh, it's not crazy at all. Well, also you have to keep in mind that, Ja is not going to be an all-star because of how many games he's going to miss. Mm-hmm. And if the Grizzlies are in a position to where they're still a top 4 seed, and you look at the Grizzlies, Jaren has already been an all-star before. There might be a chance they get 2. If he goes out there and he's averaging 25 a game, I think it wouldn't be surprising. I think he would have had a chance last year if he hadn't gotten injured. Yeah. But it is going to be hard for him just because there are a lot of really good guards in the West and just in the NBA in general. There's a lot of really good guards, So it's going to be difficult for him to get there. But I do think that he'll have a chance and he can play his way into it. And I think that if he plays well enough, especially because the reserves are picked by, assistant coaches, I think that it'll be easier for him to play his way into something like that. I don't think he's going to be an all-star starter, obviously, but I think he'll have a chance to be a reserve. But I would also say Jaren will too. But yeah, I think he's just gonna have to score a lot more. They're gonna have to ask a lot more out of him. Him and Jaren basically being the 1A, 1B based on the matchup. Probably more Jaren 1A, Bane 1B. But if Bane is really having it going some nights, I think he can be the go-to guy. And I think that they've already shown that even when Ja was playing too, that there were nights where they kind of let Bane take over because it really just felt like his night. And I think that that's something that they're going to do a lot of this year. And like you said, he's the best 3-level scorer on the team. I feel like his rookie year, he proved that he could shoot the 3 ball really well. His second year, he kind of proved that it's not just catch and shoot. He can do a lot more. And then last year, he proved that he can do it consistently. It wasn't a 1-year thing. It wasn't the fact that nobody was expecting it. Now they're expecting you can't play the same. They were expecting Desmond Bane last year, and he still came out and, ended up averaging 22 a game, even though he was injured, most of the season. So that's the big thing, is that as long as he's back to 100% health, I think that he's going to have a really great year. I think he already took such a large step last year, and I think him being back fully healthy, having that, if you look back, I'll always tell anybody, go back and look at that game against the Nets, because the way that he played in that game, I just felt like he had an extra step that he didn't have later in the season. And I think that when he has that back, plus, he's going to be rehabbing, but he's also going to be getting stronger this offseason too, getting faster, everything like that. Because everybody is still they're still not physically at their peak yet. They're getting there, but they're still not physically at their peak yet. They still got a couple more years of development and stuff like that. So I think that's something that's going to be really good for Desmond Bane too. I think he's just going to come back as a much better player overall, and I'm excited to see it.
Dude, yeah. Can we take a second though and talk about how crazy first of all, when 2K released their rankings, had Desmond Bane ranked in 85 and also didn't have him in top 5 and 3-point like in the 3-point numbers. I don't know. That was just kind of ridiculous to me, and just kind of furthered my underrated Desmond Bane agenda.
Yeah, we'll see if maybe though. I mean, the official game isn't out yet, so they still have time to fix some stuff, I guess. But I don't know. I don't really care. Like, I mean, it's something cool to look at sometimes, but I feel like most of the time when it comes to that, they're just taking whatever ratings they were at the end of last season, and then they're just they might update a couple things based on the playoffs. But for the Grizzlies, I mean, they only played the one series, Ja was injured and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't really a ton that they probably took away. And, they usually don't drop players ratings because of stuff in the playoffs as much. Yeah. So I think that's probably what it was. I think if the Grizzlies had, made a deep run, maybe they would have had some players higher, but they just kind of left them the same. But I think that when it comes to stuff like that, they'll update it throughout the season. If the Grizzlies start playing well, they'll get updated. And I think, like I said, I think Jaren is going to have a really good year. I think Bane is going to have a really good year. Both of them, as not to say that it's good that Ja is going to miss those games, but I think that's going to be an opportunity for both of them to kind of take another step as to being the offensive leader of the team as well, as Jaren being the defensive leader. But both of them kind of taking a bigger role in scoring and looking for themselves to be the guy. And I think that that's something that can be good for them. And, we've seen it in the past when Ja's been out. He's been out, and both of them have played really well, especially Bane. And then when Ja comes back, Bane is still playing at that same level. So I think that that's something that we're going to see this year as well. And I'm just excited to see how him and Marcus Smart kind of learn how to play off each other as well.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. I'm really excited. I'm really excited for Bane and Smart. Just because I feel like, Bane hasn't really played with someone of Marcus Smart's caliber defensively, who can just show him a lot of things, especially as a guard with similar build, similar height, just on how to move your feet and defend people. Not that Bane's a traffic cone or anything. He's actually a pretty solid defender in and of himself. But I think that chemistry, kind of like you said, is really going to shine. But I got one quick hit before I let you go. So Desmond Bane last season averaged 4.4 assists. So pose it to you, over under Desmond Bane, 5 assists per game next season.
I'll say over, mostly because at the beginning of the season, I think he's going to be consistently getting 6 assists a game. I wouldn't be surprised at that. I would probably put it like 5.3. Something like that. Like, I don't think he's going to go out there and average like 7 assists a game. And if he did, that would be awesome. But I'm not seeing something like that. But 5 assists a game, I could definitely see that.
Yeah. Okay. I'm also going to go over. I still believe that Desmond Bane's playmaking is still something that we haven't seen the best of, just in terms of him being that facilitator on the floor. Just, when he came into the league, like, we weren't talking like a lot of scouts and everything. They weren't talking about Desmond Bane's playmaking skill. It was mainly about his shooting and like how he can contribute through his shooting. But we saw over the course of his time in the league, he has grown as a very reputable playmaker and someone who can handle the offense. So I think that'll just continue to grow, especially being next to John Morant, being next to Steven Adams too, who he's going to be next to. And we know the 2-man game that they have when they're both on the floor. I'm also going to take the over on that. And I really think Desmond Bane is going to have another playmaking leap as the lead guard there. But Bryson, I've kept you away from the Las Vegas Aces for too long now. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on to the show. Do you have anything on your side that you want to plug yourself?
Oh yeah, just follow me on Twitter at Bryson Wright 3, and then always subscribe to Bluff City Media on YouTube. The Next Gen podcast. Me and Alex Winton, we usually drop on Thursdays. And yeah, so we'll be coming out this Thursday talking, some of this same stuff, talking a little bit about FIBA, talking about Pau Gasol being inducted into the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. And then we're going to get into the in-season tournament stuff as well and kind of give a little bit of a breakdown on that. So that'll be coming out later this week.
Awesome. Bryson, always a pleasure, man. I'll see you in the Twitterverse as always. But thank you so much, Bryson, for coming on to the show tonight. Really appreciate you, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
And that will be the end of Grizz 901 for tonight. Just want to leave you guys with some closing thoughts, kind of like as I alluded to in the beginning of the show. Look, the Grizzlies, they're not going to be the national media darlings this year because Ja Morant is not going to be on the team for the first 25 games. Things are going to look different for the Grizzlies. They're not going to be widely talked about. They're not going to have all those constant top 10 highlights on SportsCenter because Ja is playing. But look, that's not a bad thing. That just means that the Grizzlies can continue to shock people, that they can continue to be this top team in the West, anchored in those first 25 games by leaps from Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane. So look, this isn't something the Grizzlies should be mad about per se. Disrespectful, yes, because Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane, they are stars in their own right who deserve a platform and they deserve the spotlight. But this doesn't mean that the Grizzlies will be any worse. This doesn't mean that the Grizzlies are going to be any different because they're less nationally broadcasted. It just means that the Grizzlies can continue to shock people through their play and play so well that people can't ignore them, that people can't forget about them. And so that's what really excites me about this season, is just that the Grizzlies can really do something they've never done before without having one of their star talents on the floor for these first few games. And I think we're really going to see that. I think we're really going to see this new aspect of the Grizzlies come alive that, is just back to basketball, back to the basics, back to just playing games by breaking teams down on defense and just having new star power come to light and carry games for the Grizzlies. So it's going to be a really exciting season. And it's also going to be a very exciting week next week for Grizz 901, because we're going to have a very special guest, an extremely special guest on the show. I think really special to the Grizz community, someone who is also a really good friend of mine from the Memphis community too. I'm going to keep that as a surprise under wraps for now, but if you follow me on Twitter, I'll release that name sometime next week as the show gets closer. But just safe to say, you guys do not want to miss the show next week. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for catching up to Grizz 901 tonight. I am your host, Brandon Wakiji. And until then, guys, you know the deal. All you got to do, keep grinding, Grizz Nation.